Assalamu alaikum. I hope you all are passing a happy time. I am also fine by the grace of Almighty. Dear students, you know, in my previous class I talked about finite verb and non-finite verb. Today I am here again with a new video, with a new class. Now I have chosen phrase and clause to explain. I believe that it will also be beneficial to you. So please watch the video with great concentration. If you can, share the video with your friends so that they can be benefited watching the video. Dear students, we will not waste our time. We will start the lesson. Let's start. At first, we will know about phrase. What is phrase, dear students? I have written the meaning of the word phrase in our native language. And there are 4 characteristics of a phrase. To know about phrase, we should understand, or we should know about these characteristics. A phrase is a group of words. A phrase is a group of words actually. Without a group of words, you can't make a phrase. To make a phrase, you need some words. More than one words. More than one word you need to make a phrase. And in this group of words, you find no finite verb. A finite verb is absent in a phrase. You find no finite verb in a phrase. And that's why you will find no subject also in a phrase. Okay? A phrase is a group of words. In this group of words, you will find no finite verb, no subject. But sometimes you may find non-finite verb. But a non-finite verb is not mandatory for a clause. It is not mandatory. A non-finite verb may be found in a phrase, but without a non-finite verb, a phrase can be formed. Okay? Now we will know about clause. What is clause? Clause is also a group of words. But there are some basic differences between phrase and clause. In a phrase, we find a finite verb. Without a finite verb, we can't think of a clause. This is the main characteristic of a clause. A clause needs a finite verb. Without a finite verb, we can't make a clause. And as we find a finite verb, we find a subject also in a clause. In a clause, before a finite verb, we find a subject. But in this phrase, we find no subject. In a clause, we find a verb, but in a phrase, we find no finite verb. And these two are the main differences between phrase and clause. In a phrase, you will find no finite verb, but in a clause, you will find a finite verb. In a phrase, you will find no subject, but in a clause, you will find a subject. These are the main differences between phrase and clause. Now, we will explain two examples to clarify the lesson, and it will be easier to you if you understand these two examples. So, let's explain. The first example: because of his illness, he stayed at home. Dear students, notice at the first part of the sentence, there are 4 words: because of his illness. But in this part of the sentence, we find no subject, no finite verb. There is no subject and no finite verb. And that's why we can call it a phrase. Because we know in a phrase, a subject and a finite verb are absent. And in this part of the sentence, finite verb and subject are absent. But in this part of the sentence, we find a subject he and a verb and a finite verb stayed. This is the past form of a verb, that is stay. And we know to express past tense, we use the past form of a verb. And stayed is the past form of stay, and he is the subject of this verb. So, we notice that there is a finite verb and a subject in this part of the sentence, and that's why we can call it a clause. Okay, now look at the last example. By working hard, you can succeed in life. At the beginning of the sentence, we find 3 words: by working hard. By is a preposition, working is a non-finite verb, hard is an adjective. In this part of the sentence, we find no subject, no finite verb. And that's why we can call it a phrase. Working is a non-finite verb, and in a phrase we may find a non-finite verb. But there is no finite verb, there is no subject, and that's why we can call it a phrase. Look at the last part of the sentence. Here, you is a subject, can succeed is a finite verb. As there is a subject and a finite verb, we can call it a clause. Dear students, I hope you can understand the lesson, and now it will be easier to you to understand phrase and clause. That's all for today. Stay home, stay safe. Goodbye.